There is a food sitting in your kitchen right now, maybe even in your refrigerator at this very moment, that could be quietly saving your prostate, your heart, and your brain. And there is another food you are probably eating every single day that is doing the exact opposite. Silently, slowly, without a single warning sign until it is too late. You will not hear this at your next routine checkup. Your doctor does not have time to go through this with you, but I do. And what I am about to share with you could genuinely change the trajectory of the next decade of your life. I am Dr. Akira Tanaka. If you are new here, welcome to the channel. Before we go any further, if you are serious about protecting your prostate, staying strong, and living without fear, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I share real information backed by real science for men like you. And if this topic matters to you, type 1 in the comments and tell me where in the world you are watching from. If not, type 0 so I know how to help you better next time. Now let us get into it. What food actually does to a man over 60? I want you to picture two men. Same age, 67. Same neighborhood. Same family history of prostate issues. One of them is in my office every few months, managing symptoms, adjusting medications, looking tired. The other one comes in once a year, labs look clean, sleeps through the night, moves without pain, and still plays golf twice a week. The difference between those two men is not luck. It is not genetics. When I sit down and really talk to them, what I almost always find is this. Their diets are completely different. Not in some extreme way. Not one of them is a health fanatic and the other is eating fast food every night. The differences are subtle, specific, and they matter enormously. Because here is the truth about nutrition after 60 that almost no one tells you. Your body has changed. The way it absorbs nutrients, the way it uses protein, the way it responds to sugar, to salt, to fat, all of it has shifted. What worked fine at 40 can quietly destroy you at 65, and what you might have dismissed as health food your whole life could now be one of the most powerful medicines available to you. In the next several minutes, I am going to walk you through the foods that matter most to men over 60, what they do inside your prostate, your circulation, your brain, and your hormones, and what happens when you go without them. Stay with me, because by the time we get to point 4, you're going to look at your grocery list very differently. 1. Lycopene-rich foods and the prostate connection. Let me tell you about a patient I will call Raymond. He came to me at 71, a retired engineer, sharp guy, the kind of man who researches everything before his appointments. He had been experiencing that all-too-familiar combination of symptoms. Waking up 2, 3, 4 times a night to urinate. A weak stream. That uncomfortable pressure in the lower abdomen that never fully goes away. He came in expecting to talk about medication. What he did not expect was for me to ask him how often he ate tomatoes. He looked at me the way patients sometimes do when they think their doctor has gone off script. And then I showed him the research. Lycopene is a naturally occurring compound found in red and pink foods, most powerfully in cooked tomatoes, watermelon, and pink grapefruit. And for the prostate, it is close to extraordinary. Lycopene is a potent antioxidant, meaning it fights the kind of oxidative damage that accelerates cell mutation, inflammation, and the growth of abnormal tissue in the prostate gland. Multiple large studies have shown that men who consume lycopene-rich foods regularly have a measurably lower risk of prostate cancer, and more immediately relevant for many of my patients, they experience less inflammation in the prostate, which directly affects urinary symptoms. The pressure eases. The nighttime trips decrease. The flow improves. Here is the part that surprised Raymond and surprises most of my patients. Cooked tomatoes deliver lycopene more effectively than raw ones. The heat actually breaks down the cell walls and releases more of the compound into a form your body can absorb. A bowl of tomato soup, a serving of marinara sauce, even a slow-cooked stew with tomato paste. These are not just comfort foods. They are medicine for your prostate. But lycopene is only the beginning, because the prostate does not exist in isolation. What inflames it often inflames the rest of you, your arteries, your joints, your brain. And the opposite is also true. When you feed one system well, the benefits ripple outward. Raymond came back 6 months later. He had made one real dietary shift, adding lycopene-rich foods 4 or 5 times a week. His symptoms had noticeably improved. He was sleeping better. And for the first time in years, he told me, he was not thinking about the bathroom before he left the house. That is what the right food can do. And that is just point 1. 2. Zinc and the hormone you cannot afford to lose. There is a mineral that most men over 60 are quietly deficient in, and the consequences of that deficiency are showing up in ways they never connect to their diet. Low energy, reduced drive, slower recovery after exercise, a general sense of flatness that they attribute to age. That mineral is zinc, and its relationship with the aging male body is one of the most important and underappreciated stories in men's health. I had a patient, a 68-year-old man named George, who described his situation like this. I used to wake up ready to take on the day. Now I wake up and I just want to go back to sleep. I thought it was depression. I thought it was just getting old. But what we found when we ran a full panel was that his testosterone had dropped significantly, and his zinc levels were critically low. These two facts were not unrelated. Zinc is directly involved in testosterone production. The prostate gland itself contains one of the highest concentrations of zinc in the entire human body. It uses zinc to regulate cell growth, fluid production, and the enzymes that keep prostate tissue healthy. When zinc is depleted, the prostate becomes vulnerable. Inflammation increases. The risk of cellular abnormality rises. And testosterone, already naturally declining in older men, drops even further. The best dietary sources of zinc for men are oysters, which contain more zinc per serving than almost any other food on the planet, followed by beef, pumpkin seeds, chickpeas, cashews, and fortified cereals. These are not exotic foods. They are accessible, affordable, and powerful. What I always tell my patients is this: if you are eating a diet heavy in processed food, white bread, sugar, and little variety, your zinc is almost certainly low, and your body is paying the price in ways you may not even recognize yet. You feel slower. Your mood is flatter. Your muscle mass is declining faster than it should. Your prostate is working harder with fewer resources. George made the changes. He increased his zinc-rich foods, reduced the processed food crowding out his nutrition, and within 3 months, his testosterone had moved in the right direction. He said, and I quote exactly what he told me, "I feel like someone turned the lights back on." That is what zinc can do when it has been missing. But here is where it gets even more interesting. Because zinc is not the only nutrient your prostate desperately needs. The next one affects not just your prostate, but the very pipes that carry blood through your body, and without it, everything downstream suffers. Free, omega-3 fatty acids, and what happens to your circulation when you go without them. I want you to think about your blood vessels like a network of roads. When you are younger, those roads are clear, flexible, and wide open. Traffic moves freely. Everything gets where it needs to go. Your heart, your brain, your prostate, your muscles, they all receive a steady, healthy supply of oxygen-rich blood. As you age, especially without the right dietary support, those roads begin to narrow. The walls stiffen, plaque builds, traffic slows, and the organs and tissues at the end of the line, the ones furthest from the heart, the ones in your pelvis and lower body, they start to suffer first. This is not just a metaphor. It is the clinical reality I see in my patients every single week. A patient I will call Walter came to me at 72. He was not a smoker, not overweight, and had normal blood pressure. But he had erectile dysfunction that had come on gradually over 3 years. He also had cold feet, mild cramping when he walked, and a persistent dull ache in his lower back. These symptoms seemed unrelated to him. To me, they told one clear story. His circulation was compromised, and it had been for a long time. When I asked about his diet, the pattern emerged quickly. He ate very little fish, no flaxseed or walnuts, mostly chicken, bread, potatoes, the occasional steak. A diet almost entirely absent of omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3s, found most powerfully in fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, sardines, and herring, as well as in walnuts, flaxseed, and chia seeds, are one of the most well-documented anti-inflammatory and circulation-supporting compounds in all of nutritional science. They reduce triglycerides. They lower arterial inflammation. They improve the flexibility of blood vessel walls. They make the blood itself less sticky and more efficient at moving through the body. For men over 60, the implications are massive. Better circulation means better prostate health because the prostate depends on a rich blood supply to function and heal. It means better erectile function, since an erection is fundamentally a circulatory event. It means better brain function, because the brain is an extremely blood-hungry organ. And it means a healthier heart, which in men over 65 is the #1 determinant of how long and how well they live. The research on omega-3s and prostate-specific inflammation is particularly compelling. Chronic low-grade inflammation in and around the prostate is now understood to be a major driver of benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH, that uncomfortable enlargement that makes urination difficult and disrupts sleep. Omega-3s actively reduce that inflammation. They turn down the heat. Walter added fatty fish twice a week and a daily tablespoon of ground flaxseed to his morning oatmeal. 6 months later, his circulation markers had improved, his cold feet episodes had decreased, and he told me the improvement in his sexual function had, in his words, given him back a part of his confidence he thought was simply gone with age. Food did that, not medication. Food. And if circulation affects everything, what I am about to share next may be the most important connection of all, because your brain needs to eat, too. And what you feed it after 60 determines not just how sharp you are today, but how intact your mind will be 5 and 10 years from now. Before we go further, I want to pause here and ask you something directly. If what I am sharing is resonating with you, if you are sitting there nodding, recognizing yourself or someone you love in these stories, please take 5 seconds right now and subscribe to this channel. Turn on the notification bell. This information is free. It always will be. But the only way I can keep making it is if you tell the algorithm that it matters. Hit subscribe now, and then come right back, because what comes next may be the most important thing I share today. 4. B vitamins, cognitive decline, and the food most men over 60 stopped eating. I had a patient named Harold, 74, a retired accountant. His wife brought him in. She was not alarmed exactly, but she said something that I have heard from spouses dozens of times. He is just not himself. Slower. Quieter. He used to be quick with numbers. Now he loses his train of thought. I wanted him checked. Harold scored in the normal range on cognitive testing, but only just. And when I looked at his blood work, one thing stood out clearly. His homocysteine levels were elevated. This is a compound that, when it builds up in the blood, damages blood vessels in the brain and accelerates cognitive decline. It is directly linked to memory loss, reduced processing speed, and in long-term studies, a higher risk of dementia. And the most reliable, evidence-backed way to bring homocysteine down is not a medication. It is B vitamins, specifically B6, B12, and folate, the trio that works together in the body to metabolize homocysteine before it can do damage. Here is the critical part that affects nearly every man over 65 I see. Vitamin B12 absorption declines naturally with age. The stomach produces less of the acid needed to separate B12 from food. This means even men who eat reasonably well can be quietly deficient, not dramatically, not obviously, but enough to affect how their brain functions day by day. The best dietary sources of B12 are animal proteins, particularly beef liver, clams, salmon, tuna, eggs, and dairy. For B6, you are looking at chicken, turkey, potatoes, bananas, and chickpeas. Folate comes from leafy green vegetables, lentils, beans, and fortified grains. What I find in my practice, again and again, is that men who have shifted to very light diets in their 60s and 70s, often because of decreased appetite or dental issues or simply less interest in cooking, are quietly starving their brains of the B vitamins that keep cognitive function running smoothly. The fog sets in. They blame age, they accept it, but it is not inevitable. Harold's wife started making sure he ate eggs at breakfast, added salmon twice a week, and introduced a small daily serving of lentil soup. She called it the Soup Project. 4 months later, Harold came in for a follow-up. His homocysteine had dropped into the healthy range. His wife said, with visible relief, "He is more present again. He is back in the room with me." That is not a small thing. That is everything. And it came from food. But brain health and prostate health share something else in common, something I rarely hear discussed in health content. They are both deeply affected by gut health, and the food connection to your gut microbiome is the one that may surprise you most. 5. Fermented foods and the gut connection. No one talks about. About 2 years ago, the medical community began paying much more serious attention to something researchers had been quietly studying for years: the relationship between the gut microbiome, the vast community of bacteria living in your digestive tract, and whole body health outcomes in older adults. What they found was striking. Men with more diverse, healthier gut bacteria had lower levels of systemic inflammation, better immune response, more stable hormonal profiles, stronger cardiovascular markers, and, significantly, a lower incidence of prostate-related conditions. The gut and the prostate are connected through what researchers call the gut-prostate axis. Inflammation that begins in a disrupted gut, driven by poor diet, overuse of antibiotics, or chronic stress, does not stay in the gut. It travels. It elevates inflammatory markers throughout the body, including in the prostate. And in a prostate already under pressure from age and hormonal change, that additional inflammation can tip the balance toward BPH, prostatitis, or worse. I had a patient, a 70-year-old man named James, who came to me with what he described as a revolving door of symptoms. Some months his prostate symptoms were manageable. Other months they flared badly, seemingly at random. He was frustrated, confused, and exhausted by the unpredictability of it. When I dug into his diet history, the pattern became clear. His gut health was chaotic. Years of a low-fiber diet, occasional antibiotic use, and almost no fermented foods had left his gut microbiome in a state of chronic low-grade disruption, and his prostate was feeling it. Fermented foods, including plain yogurt with live cultures, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, and tempeh, introduce beneficial bacteria into the gut and help restore the kind of microbial balance that keeps inflammation in check. They also support the production of short-chain fatty acids, compounds that nourish the gut lining and reduce intestinal permeability, which is that dangerous state often called leaky gut, where toxins and inflammatory molecules escape into the bloodstream. For men over 60, the recommendation is simple but specific. Include at least one serving of a fermented food every day. Not a probiotic supplement, though those have their place. Real fermented food. A cup of plain yogurt, a small serving of kimchi alongside dinner, a glass of kefir in the morning. These are not dramatic changes, but their effects, compounded over months, are meaningful. James made the shift. He also increased his fiber intake, adding vegetables and legumes that feed beneficial gut bacteria. Within 4 months, the flare pattern had smoothed out significantly. He was not symptom-free, but the unpredictability had decreased. He felt more in control, and for a man dealing with chronic health conditions, that sense of control is not a small thing. It is the difference between living your life and being managed by your symptoms. Now I want to shift to something that ties everything together, because I have talked about what you should eat. But there is a set of foods that men over 60 are eating constantly. Foods that undo everything, that drive inflammation, disrupt hormones, and quietly accelerate the damage to the prostate, the brain, and the heart. And most men have no idea how much they are eating them. 6. The foods that are actively destroying your prostate. After 60, I need to be direct with you here, not to frighten you, but because I respect you enough to tell you the truth. There is a category of food that appears in nearly every diet I review when a patient's prostate health is deteriorating. It shows up in the breakfast cereals, in the condiments, in the packaged snacks, in the frozen meals. It is ultra-processed food. And for men over 60, it is not just bad for the waistline. It is actively toxic to the systems we have been talking about all day. A patient I will call Robert came to me at 69, overweight by only about 15 pounds, moderately active, did not smoke, and had a glass of wine most evenings. On the surface, he looked like a fairly typical healthy older man, but his PSA levels had been creeping up. His inflammatory markers were elevated. He was tired constantly. His sleep was poor. When we sat down and went through everything he ate in a typical week, here is what I found. Breakfast was often a packaged cereal with skim milk, a glass of orange juice, and maybe a piece of toast with margarine. Lunch was frequently a deli sandwich or a frozen meal reheated at home. Dinner varied but often included some kind of packaged sauce, a processed side dish, and a dessert. Snacks throughout the day were crackers, chips, and flavored nuts. This is not the diet of someone who is careless. This is the diet of a man eating what the modern food environment tells him is normal. But inside his body, every single one of those ultra-processed foods was delivering a payload of refined carbohydrates, industrial seed oils, artificial preservatives, and added sugars that was driving a constant, systemic inflammatory response. Here is what chronic inflammation does to the prostate specifically. It stimulates the production of inflammatory cytokines, chemical messengers that signal the immune system to stay on high alert. In the prostate, this chronic alert state promotes cell proliferation, meaning tissue grows when and where it should not. The gland enlarges, the urethra narrows, symptoms worsen, and the environment becomes far more hospitable to the kind of cellular changes that precede cancer. Beyond the prostate, ultra-processed food disrupts the hormonal axis. Added sugars spike insulin chronically, and chronically elevated insulin drives down testosterone. It also promotes the conversion of testosterone to estrogen through a process called aromatization, particularly in men carrying extra body fat. This means the man eating a standard Western ultra-processed diet is slowly dismantling his own hormonal foundation, losing testosterone, gaining estrogen, and wondering why he does not feel like himself anymore. The specific foods I tell men to minimize or eliminate are these: packaged breads and pastries made with refined flour and added sugar, processed meats like hot dogs, bacon, and deli meats high in nitrates, margarine and any product containing partially hydrogenated or fully hydrogenated oils, sodas and sweetened juices, packaged snack foods including most crackers, chips, and flavored nuts with preservatives and seed oils, and fast food of almost any kind. Robert was not willing to overhaul his entire diet overnight, and I did not ask him to. What I asked him to do was replace one processed food a week with a whole food alternative. The packaged cereal became oatmeal with walnuts and berries. The frozen lunch became a simple homemade soup. The deli sandwich became grilled chicken over salad greens. Gradual, sustainable, realistic. 6 months later, his PSA had stabilized. His inflammatory markers had dropped. He had lost 8 pounds without trying. He looked different, better, younger, honestly, and he told me something I have heard variations of many times. I had no idea food was doing this to me. I thought I was eating normally. The truth is, for the modern food environment, he was eating normally, but normal has become dangerous. 7. Selenium, green tea, and the anti-cancer nutrients you are probably ignoring. We are nearly at the end, but I want to leave you with 2 things that I believe deserve far more attention in conversations about men's health after 60. The first is selenium. The second is a compound called EGCG, found in green tea. Selenium is a trace mineral with a powerful role in prostate cell protection. It works as a cofactor for glutathione peroxidase, one of the body's primary antioxidant enzymes, the internal defense system that identifies and neutralizes oxidative damage before it can alter DNA. Studies have found that men with higher selenium levels have a measurably lower risk of prostate cancer, and that selenium deficiency is associated with faster progression of prostate disease. The single best dietary source of selenium is Brazil nuts. 2 Brazil nuts per day provide more than enough selenium for optimal function. That is not a supplement. That is 2 nuts. I have patients who have added this to their morning routine and nothing else, and the simplicity of it often surprises them. Other sources include tuna, sardines, beef, turkey, eggs, and whole wheat bread. A patient I will call Michael came to me at 66 concerned about his family history. His father had prostate cancer at 71, his uncle at 68. He was not symptomatic yet, but he wanted to be proactive. I put him on a nutrition plan that included selenium-rich foods, lycopene, zinc, and omega-3s. 2 Brazil nuts every morning became a ritual for him, something small he could do every single day to fight back against his genetics. 3 years later, his PSA remains well within the normal range. His prostate is healthy by every measure. I cannot tell you that food alone will always override genetics, but I can tell you that giving your body the tools it needs to protect itself is always better than giving it nothing. Now, green tea, EGCG, or Epigallocatechin galate, is the most abundant catechin in green tea, and it has been the subject of significant research for its effects on prostate health specifically. It appears to inhibit the growth of prostate cancer cells in laboratory studies, reduce PSA levels in some clinical trials, and lower the kind of inflammatory activity that drives BPH progression. 2 to 3 cups of green tea per day is the amount most research points to for meaningful benefit. It is not a cure, it is not a guarantee, but combined with everything else I have shared today, it is one more layer of protection, one more reason your body has to stay healthy. One of my patients, a 73-year-old former teacher who had struggled with urinary symptoms for years, started drinking 2 cups of green tea in the morning in place of his second cup of coffee. He also made the dietary changes we discussed across all the previous points. After 4 months, he told me something that I found quietly profound. He said, "I feel like I am finally doing something for myself instead of just waiting for something to go wrong." That shift in mindset, from passive to active, from waiting to doing, is one of the most powerful things that can happen to a man at any age. And sometimes all it takes is the knowledge that you have tools, real tools, available to you right now. 8. Bringing it all together. What to eat, why it matters, and what is at stake. Let me bring this home for you, because I want you to leave with something clear and actionable, not just inspired. Everything we have talked about today connects to a single truth. After 60, your body needs more nutritional precision, not less. The margin for error narrows, the impact of deficiencies grows larger, and the foods you eat are no longer just fuel, they are instructions. Every meal sends a message to your prostate, your brain, your blood vessels, your immune system. The question is, what message you want to send. Lycopene-rich foods, especially cooked tomatoes, tell your prostate to stay calm, stay clear, stay healthy. Zinc from oysters, seeds, and lean meats tells your testosterone production to keep going, tells your prostate to stay protected. Omega-3 fatty acids from fatty fish and flaxseed tell your blood vessels to stay flexible, your inflammation to stay low, your circulation to stay strong. B vitamins from eggs, animal proteins, and leafy greens tell your brain to stay sharp, tell the compounds that damage your neurons to clear out. Fermented foods tell your gut to stay balanced, tell your immune system to stay measured and effective. And avoiding ultra-processed foods tells every system in your body that you are not going to keep feeding the fires of inflammation that are accelerating your decline. This is not a diet plan. It is not a weight loss program. It is a decision about how you want to age. And the men I have seen make these changes. They do not just feel better on paper. They feel better in their lives. They sleep. They move. They think. They live with a confidence in their body that they thought they had lost for good. One of the most important conversations I have ever had with a patient happened after a man named Theodore came to see me at 78. He had been following a nutrition-focused approach for 2 years, since we had the kind of conversation I am having with you right now. He sat across from me and said, "Dr. Tanaka, I want you to know something. I am not afraid of my body anymore. For the last 20 years of my life, my body felt like an enemy, something breaking down, something I had to manage and fear and fight. Now it feels like it is on my side again. That is the goal. Not perfection, not turning back the clock, just getting your body back on your side, giving it what it needs to work with you instead of against you. That is what food can do. That is what this channel is about. Because aging is not the enemy. Neglect is the enemy. And the moment you decide to stop accepting decline as inevitable, the moment you pick up a handful of Brazil nuts instead of a bag of chips, add a piece of salmon to your weekly menu, drink green tea in the morning, and read the labels on the food you buy, that is the moment something begins to shift. It does not happen overnight, but it happens. I have seen it 1,000 times, and I want it to happen for you. If this video gave you something useful, please share it. Send it to a friend, a brother, a father, someone who needs to hear this. Type 1 in the comments below if you are going to make at least one dietary change based on what you heard today. Tell me which one. I read every comment, and your engagement genuinely helps this content reach the men who need it most. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. Because next time, we are going to go even deeper into what happens to the male body when it does not get adequate protein after 65. And the specific number most men are dangerously below. You do not want to miss that one. I am Dr. Akira Tanaka. Thank you for being here. Stay strong, stay informed, and take care of that body. it still has a lot of living left to do.